Lincoln, Nebraska, where the suburbs are supposed to mean safety, comfort, and predictability. But on October 14, 2022, that sense of security would be shattered in a way no one could have imagined. 17-year-old Kayla Dorsey, a straight-A student and captain of the soccer team, was babysitting two young children, just 4 and 6 years old, in a warmly lit home on Maplewood Drive. The air was thick with the scent of popcorn and crayons, the children's laughter echoing faintly down the hall. The parents, trusting Kayla completely, left for a rare night out. Their car's headlights faded into the darkness, the front door clicking shut behind them, leaving Kayla alone with the children in the quiet house. Kayla had spent countless evenings here, her presence a comfort to the family. But tonight, as she settled in, a subtle unease crept in, a feeling she couldn't quite explain, but couldn't ignore either. Something felt off. At 9:53 p.m., with the children asleep upstairs, Kayla's hand shook as she reached for her phone. Her heart hammered in her chest as she dialed 911, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. The dispatcher picked up, but instead of Kayla's voice, only a chilling sound came through. Heavy, ragged breathing, each exhale more desperate than the last. Then, a whisper, low, male, impossible to understand. Suddenly a scream ripped through the silence, raw and terrified. And then, nothing. Just the suffocating quiet of a house where something terrible had happened, and the mystery was only beginning. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, suburban streets bathed in the hush of night, porch lights flickering softly, and the distant hum of a television behind closed curtains. Inside, Kayla Dorsey settled onto the living room couch, the children already tucked in upstairs, her mind drifting between homework and the comforting predictability of her routine babysitting job. The clock ticked steadily, each minute stretching longer than the last. But as the hours crept by, a subtle unease began to settle in. The house felt too quiet, each creak of the floorboards, each whisper of wind against the window seemed amplified. Kayla glanced at her phone, thumb hovering over the screen, debating whether to call the parents just to hear another voice. Shadows seemed to shift in the corners of her vision and the silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Then, a sound, barely audible, echoed from the hallway. Kayla's heart raced. She tried to steady her breath, telling herself it was nothing. But the sense of being watched grew stronger, prickling at the back of her neck. The television's glow flickered, casting strange shapes on the walls. She strained to listen, every muscle tensed as footsteps, soft, deliberate, crept across the hardwood floor upstairs. Her mind raced with possibilities. Was it the children, or something else? Kayla's hands trembled as she reached for her phone, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She dialed 911, barely able to keep her voice steady. But on the other end, only silence, except for the faint, panicked breaths and a muffled male voice in the background. The line disconnected abruptly, leaving dispatchers with a chilling sense that something was terribly wrong. Officers were dispatched within minutes, racing through the quiet streets, their sirens slicing through the stillness. The neighborhood, once peaceful, was now alive with flashing lights and the urgency of emergency. The first responders arrived at 10:01 p.m. The front door was ajar, swaying gently as if someone had just slipped through. The porch light cast a pale circle on the welcome mat, illuminating muddy footprints that hadn't been there before. Upstairs, the children were found huddled together in a closet, their faces streaked with tears, clutching each other in the darkness. They were unharmed, but their terror was unmistakable. Kayla Dorsey, gone. The closet door had been pulled shut from the inside, as if the children had hidden there for protection. There were no signs of forced entry. The lock was untouched, the doorframe unmarked. It was as if whoever entered had a key, or never needed one. The living room remained pristine, as if nothing had happened. No overturned furniture, no shattered glass. Only an unsettling stillness lingered. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Kayla's phone was found wedged deep between the couch cushions, its screen still glowing, the audio recording app running. Whatever happened that night, it had been captured, at least in part, by the device she left behind. The recording would later reveal the escalating panic in her voice, the desperate whispers, and the chilling presence of someone else in the room. The quiet night had turned into a nightmare, and the mystery was only beginning. Detective Renee Marshall, lead on the case, described the audio as disturbing. But for the 911 dispatcher who answered the call, it was a nightmarish ordeal. one that would replay in their mind for weeks, every detail etched in memory. The dispatcher later described the moment the call came in. The phone rang just after 9:40 p.m. On the other end, a faint, trembling voice, barely audible, whispered, "Please help me." The dispatcher could hear a clock ticking, thunder rumbling in the distance, and the unmistakable sound of someone trying to control their breathing. Every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. The dispatcher pressed the headset closer, straining to catch every word. Static crackled through the line. The caller's voice quivered as if terrified of being overheard. "He's inside," the whisper came, followed by a gasp and hurried, shallow breaths. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the call, then a chilling silence. The dispatcher's heart raced. Then, out of nowhere, a piercing scream erupted, abruptly cut off as if someone had pressed mute. The line went dead. The dispatcher froze for a split second, then sprang into action, relaying the address to officers with trembling hands. Neighbors were questioned. One man, Jacob Teller, who lived across the street, reported seeing a shadowy figure approach the house just before the call. The terror and suspense from that night still haunt everyone involved. Detective Renee Marshall, lead on the case, sat down with us, her expression grave and eyes shadowed by exhaustion. She spoke about the audio, calling it not just disturbing but haunting, something that lingered in her mind long after she left the station each night. "It's the kind of thing you can't shake," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can hear the fear," she said quietly. "It sounds like someone trying not to be heard, breathing. Then the whisper. I've listened to it dozens of times and every time it chills me." Marshall revealed that she'd spent hours replaying the tape, searching for any background noise, any clue, sometimes late into the night, long after her team had gone home. Detective Marshall reflected on the moment the scream came through the tape. It's not just a sound, it's a plea. And then it's gone, like someone hit mute. That silence is the hardest part. She confessed that the abrupt end haunted her dreams, making her question if she'd missed something crucial in those final seconds. She explained how the team canvassed the neighborhood, desperate for any lead. "We knocked on every door, combed through hours of surveillance footage, and retraced every possible step," Marshall said. One man, Jacob Teller, who lived across the street, said he saw someone walk up the driveway around 9:40 p.m. Marshall admitted, "Every detail matters. I replay that night in my mind, hoping we missed nothing. I want answers for that family. I feel responsible for them." For Detective Marshall, this case is more than just another file. "You carry these voices with you," she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "You hope you can give them justice. But sometimes late at night you wonder if you ever really can." Jacob Teller remembers the night with unsettling clarity. He was out walking his dog, the quiet of the neighborhood broken only by the distant hum of traffic, when he noticed a tall guy, hoodie pulled up, face hidden in shadow, standing under the streetlight. The man's posture was tense, hands shoved deep in his pockets, and he kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. Something about the way the man lingered made Jacob uneasy, but he tried to brush it off, telling himself it was probably nothing. He thought maybe it was just a delivery driver, someone dropping off a late package. But the man didn't carry anything, and his glances up and down the street seemed more anxious than routine. Jacob noticed the man kept looking over his shoulder, as if worried someone might be watching him. Jacob kept walking, but he noticed the man never approached the door, never knocked, never rang the bell. He just stood there, motionless for a few moments before slowly moving toward the side of the house, glancing back one last time. Jacob wondered if the man was lost, or maybe casing the house for some reason. Later, when police canvassed the neighborhood, Jacob shared what he saw. He mentioned the man's nervous behavior and the way he avoided the front door. Officers pulled security footage from surrounding homes, hoping for a clearer picture and to determine if the man had been seen in the area before. One camera, facing the street, captured a lone figure, matching Jacob's description, walking purposefully toward the house. The man's movements were deliberate, almost cautious, as if he was trying not to draw attention. Investigators wondered if he was familiar with the property or had been watching it for some time. But then, at exactly 9:47 p.m., the footage glitched and cut out. The file was corrupted, just as the figure neared the property. Police began to suspect the camera had been disabled on purpose, possibly by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Jacob told investigators he felt a chill that night, a sense that something wasn't right. He wondered if the man had been watching the house, waiting for the right moment. Detectives now believe the camera was tampered with, intentionally, right before the crime occurred. Jacob's uneasy feeling, it turns out, was more than just nerves. His observations may have provided the first real lead in the case, and his suspicions about the man's motives are now at the center of the investigation. Detective Marshall knew from the start, cases like this are rare, but not impossible. Yet, as he pieced together the evidence, the inconsistencies grew impossible to ignore. Someone had tampered with the security feed remotely, bypassing standard encryption. Marshall's first theory: this was no random break-in. The sophistication pointed to a perpetrator who had planned every move. Whoever did this had technical skill and inside knowledge. They left almost no digital trace, just enough to show intent, but not identity. Marshall began mapping out connections. Who had access? Who understood the system? Who could move unseen? The parents were ruled out immediately. No ransom note, no financial motive. Marshall considered, was this personal, or something even darker? He started cross-referencing past cases, searching for patterns. There were no signs Kayla left on her own. No forced entry, no struggle. The abductor knew the layout, the routines. Marshall realized the perpetrator had likely watched the family for weeks, maybe longer. Her bag, jacket, and shoes were still in the living room. Kayla hadn't planned to go anywhere. That detail haunted Marshall, but it also told him the abduction was swift, calculated, and left no time for resistance. The most chilling discovery came in the basement. Marshall's heart sank as officers called him over, the tension in the air thickening as the investigation reached a turning point. Under a pile of laundry, they found a torn sheet of notebook paper, hidden but not well enough. Marshall immediately recognized its significance, a message left in desperation. The note was in Kayla's handwriting, Marshall's analysis. She wrote it in a hurry, terrified. He compared the handwriting to her schoolwork, confirming it was authentic. 4 words, hastily scrawled: "He's already inside. Help." It was a desperate warning and a crucial clue. The abductor was someone who could blend in, someone Kayla recognized too late. Forensics found no fingerprints, no DNA. The abductor was careful, methodical. Marshall's second theory: this wasn't their first time. He began to suspect a serial offender, someone who had perfected their methods. The children couldn't identify the man. They were scared, confused. Marshall pressed gently, but all they could say was, he was always quiet, always watching. He was the Whisper Man. That's all they remembered. The nickname stuck, haunting the investigation and fueling Marshall's determination to connect the dots. Local media ran with it. The Whisper Man became a symbol of fear, and a reminder of the case's urgency. Marshall used the publicity, hoping someone would come forward with a lead. 1 year later, Marshall still reviews the evidence board, searching for missed connections. He re-examines every clue, convinced the answer is hidden in plain sight. No arrests, no closure, no new evidence has surfaced. The case grows colder, but Marshall refuses to give up. Each clue, each memory, builds toward a truth he's determined to uncover. The emotional stakes are higher than ever. Kayla Dorsey remains missing, her family shattered, and Detective Marshall haunted by the question, what did he miss? The investigation is at a breaking point, and the next clue could change everything. What makes this case especially chilling is the depth and precision of evidence uncovered by forensic experts. Forensic audio analysts meticulously examined the 911 recording, using advanced software to isolate background noises, filter out static, and identify even the faintest anomalies. They slowed the clip, enhanced the frequencies, and ran multiple passes to separate overlapping voices. Analysts also used spectral analysis to pinpoint the exact moment when the background shifted, revealing a pattern that matched a door creaking open. During this process, analysts noticed subtle anomalies, tiny fluctuations in the background almost masked by the chaos. A faint metallic clink, consistent with keys or jewelry, was detected just seconds before the scream. When they enhanced these sections, a second voice emerged, low, calm. Just before the scream, it whispered, "You shouldn't have called." The words are faint, but unmistakable, sending chills through everyone who heard them. Analysts also identified a barely audible intake of breath, suggesting the whisperer was standing extremely close to the phone. The analysts confirmed the voice was not an audio artifact or interference. Its tone and cadence suggested intent. Someone was in the room, deliberately whispering those words. The presence of the metallic sound and the creaking door, combined with the proximity of the whisper, indicated the intruder was already inside before the call began. This discovery changed the entire direction of the investigation, raising new questions about what really happened that night and who else might have been involved. The final interview with Kayla's parents was raw with emotion, grief, confusion, and a pain that words could barely contain. Their voices broke as they relived the night, each memory laced with sorrow and a desperate need for answers that never came. "We just want to know what happened," her mother whispered, clutching a faded photograph, her hands shaking. "Why did this happen to our little girl? Why can't anyone tell us where she is?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered and unbearable. Investigators believe Kayla was desperately trying to hide. She had only seconds to act, and the fear in her final moments is something her family can't escape. She dialed 911, her voice barely above a whisper. But that chilling whisper wasn't her own. The question of who spoke those final words torments her parents every night. The person behind that voice has never been identified. The mystery lingers, a shadow that haunts everyone involved, especially those who loved Kayla most. Detectives still pore over the evidence, searching for a clue, any clue, that might explain what happened that night. But every answer leads to more questions, and the case remains unsolved. The neighborhood is left with only memories and fear. The playground where Kayla once laughed now sits empty, shadows stretching into the night, echoing the questions that no one can answer. No suspects, no trace, only a desperate call for help that ended in whispers, and one final unanswered scream that still haunts her family. Kayla's parents still wait for answers, clinging to hope as the mystery deepens. The silence grows heavier with each passing day, and the questions remain, aching, unresolved, and echoing in the darkness. Tonight we've walked together through the shadows of a quiet neighborhood, unraveling a story that chills to the core. The fear, confusion, and heartbreak experienced by those involved remind us how quickly the ordinary can turn into the unimaginable. For the families, the babysitter, and the community, this case left scars that may never fully heal, but also brought people together in search of answers and justice. If you found this case unsettling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. This is Vanished Whispers True Crime. As you turn off the lights tonight, remember the impact this tragedy had on everyone involved. How well do we really know those we trust? What secrets might linger behind closed doors in our own neighborhoods? Because some voices vanish, but their stories must be heard. Witness statement, neighbor. The neighbor recounted, "I was sitting in my living room watching TV when I suddenly heard a loud thud around 9:55 p.m. It was sharp, enough to make me mute the television and listen. At first I thought maybe something had fallen in my own house, but the sound seemed to come from next door. It was the kind of noise that makes your heart skip a beat. Curious and a little uneasy, I looked out my window and saw a shadow move quickly past the fence. It was just a glimpse, but it didn't look like any animal I'd seen before. The figure was hunched, almost gliding along the fence line, and for a split second, I thought I saw it pause and look back toward the house. At first I thought it was a stray cat, but the way it moved, fast, low, almost like it was trying not to be seen, made me second-guess myself. Now I'm not so sure. The more I replay it in my mind, the more I wonder if it was someone trying to avoid being noticed. Police transcript. Officer, did you see anyone leave the house? Neighbor, no, I didn't see anyone, but a few minutes later I heard a car engine start. It was faint at first, then grew louder. I remember thinking it was odd for someone to be leaving at that hour, especially since the street is usually so quiet at night. It sounded close, like it was right outside my house. I peeked through the blinds, but all I could make out were headlights and a dark shape in the driveway. The car just sat there, idling as if the driver was waiting for something, or someone. Officer, did you recognize the car? Was it familiar to the neighborhood? Neighbor, no, it was too dark to see any details. The car was just a silhouette, and the streetlights barely reached that part of the driveway. I tried to make out the license plate or any markings, but it was impossible. It felt like whoever was inside didn't want to be seen. But the engine was running for a while before it finally drove off. It was almost as if someone was waiting for the right moment. The car didn't speed away. It crept down the street, headlights off for the first few seconds, before disappearing into the night. After that, the whole street fell eerily silent, not even a dog barked. It was unsettling, like the calm after a storm. I remember standing there, staring out the window, feeling like I'd just witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see. Unsettling evidence. The next morning, police discovered fresh tire tracks in the mud near the driveway. Deep grooves, still wet, leading away from the house. The pattern was unusual, as if the tires had spun in place before finally gaining traction. But there was more. Alongside the tire marks, they found a single muddy footprint, larger than average, with a strange tread pattern that didn't match any shoes in the house. The print was pressed deep into the earth as if the person had been running or carrying something heavy. Officers noted that the tread was unlike anything they'd seen before, almost custom, with a jagged, almost claw-like design. Nearby, officers recovered a small, broken keychain, its charm shaped like a crescent moon. No one in the family recognized it. The keychain was partially buried in the mud, as if it had been dropped in a hurry. It looked old, the metal tarnished, and the clasp broken. Police ran the tire tracks and the footprint through their database. No matches. The evidence only deepened the mystery, raising more questions than answers. The keychain, too, yielded nothing. No prints, no DNA, no connection to anyone in the house or neighborhood. The neighbor, now anxious, wondered if the shadowy figure would return, or if the chilling events of that night were just the beginning. As police continued their investigation, the sense of unease lingered, and the neighborhood waited, hoping for answers that never seemed to come. 2 days after Kayla vanished, a chilling development surfaced, one that would send shockwaves through the investigation. Her phone, silent since that night, suddenly pinged a cell tower 30 miles away from her home. Investigators rushed to the location, desperate for a lead. They combed the area for any sign of her, hoping for a breakthrough, but the darkness yielded nothing. No footprints, no witnesses, no trace of Kayla or her phone. The phone was never recovered. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. Then, just hours after the failed search, the family's landline rang at exactly 3:17 a.m. The call went unanswered, but a voicemail was left, one that would haunt them forever. The message was brief, filled with static, but a faint whisper cut through. "Don't look for me." The voice was distorted, almost unrecognizable, sending chills down the spine of everyone who heard it. Was it Kayla's voice, or someone else's? The family replayed the message over and over, desperate for answers. Was it a warning, or a cruel taunt from the person responsible? The unanswered call became the center of the investigation, a riddle no one could solve. But then the investigation took a jaw-dropping turn. Forensic experts traced the origin of the 3:17 a.m. call, not to the distant area where Kayla's phone last pinged, but to a payphone just blocks from the family's home. The call hadn't come from far away, it had come from right within their own neighborhood. The unanswered call was no random event, it was a calculated move, a message sent from terrifyingly close by. The haunting voicemail, the chilling words, and the proximity of the caller shattered any sense of safety the family had left. Had the abductor been watching them all along, taunting them from the shadows? The truth remains hidden, just out of reach. Just when it seemed the mystery would remain unsolved, a new voice stepped forward, bringing hope for answers. Emily Carter, the babysitter's closest friend, came forward with a confession that would finally unravel the tangled events of that night. Her voice shaking, Emily described a phone call she received just hours before everything changed. She was terrified, more than I'd ever heard her before. She kept whispering that someone was watching her from the backyard. She said she saw a shadow move, but when she looked again, it had vanished. Dispatcher, 911, what's your emergency? Caller, unidentified. She's not alone, he's inside. The call ended in static, a chilling whisper lost in the noise. Investigators soon discovered muddy footprints leading from the backyard to the basement window, a clue that would prove vital. The prints matched neither the babysitter nor the homeowners, deepening the mystery. Each new clue seemed to raise more questions. Who was lurking in the darkness, and how did they get inside? In a late-night interview, Emily's composure finally broke. Tears streaming down her face, she revealed the truth she'd been hiding. "I never meant for any of this to happen," Emily sobbed. "It started as a prank. We just wanted to scare her a little because she'd been so distant, but it spiraled out of control." Emily confessed that she and another friend staged the shadowy figure in the backyard, never realizing how real the fear would become, or that someone else was watching too. Amid the chaos of their prank, a real intruder slipped in, exploiting the confusion and terror. The muddy footprints mystery was finally solved. One set belonged to Emily's accomplice, but the other, larger prints, belonged to the true intruder. With Emily's confession, detectives were able to piece together the night's events, leading to the arrest of the real perpetrator and bringing long-awaited justice. As thunder rumbled in the distance, Emily's final words echoed in the interview room. "If I could take it all back, I would. I never imagined our prank would open the door for something truly evil. I'm so sorry." The truth, at last, has come to light. The case is closed, the families can begin to heal, and the community can finally rest, knowing that justice has been served and the darkness has lifted.